This is Carson. I know, I did an intro like this before, but it's right to do it again since I'm reviewing Stray today, a game that came out, well, as of this review, only a few days ago. It might be the quickest turnaround from release to me playing a game to me reviewing it since I've done Doom 2016 years ago. I hadn't intended to play it right away, as I did have it on my Steam wishlist, but when I read that Stray was going to be released as a day one download for PlayStation Plus subscribers, I knew I was going to play it right away. Sorry, Ghost of Tsushima, you beautiful, beautiful game. I have something else to kill a few hours with, but I'll be back, I promise. In Stray, you play as an unnamed cat, whom I will be naming Pebbles for the sake of the review, since it sort of looks like a darker colored version of my old Tabby, and characters occasionally call her Little One, which is what I also used to do as well. Ah, Pebbles, may she rest in peace. Yes, it's show and tell day for my cats, so what? Anywho, this cat, Pebbles, opens up looking out at a massive drain of sorts, and you simply get to play around with your friends for a few minutes, and then try to descend this ravine. Of course, bad stuff happens, in this case Pebbles slipping on a pipe that gets loose, and then falling by quite a bit of height. Pebbles lands in an abandoned city of sorts, that has a very cyberpunk feel, but you can tell that everything is run down, and the town itself isn't doing so hot. You'll eventually meet a small drone-like robot, who calls himself B12 because his memory is gone, because of course it is. The kitty's goal is twofold: help B2 get his memory back, and get back to the outside where you can continue to frolic with your feline pals. There's a lot more going on story-wise than the game initially lets on, but I prefer not to spoil it. Stray relies heavily on storyline progression to keep the game moving. There's not as much action as there is storytelling and puzzle solving, so the game primarily focuses on being an adventure game. Yes, there are some action segments here and there, with one being pretty early on in the game as you're being chased by these little rodent-looking things, but it doesn't happen often. Instead, Little Pebbles navigates a few areas, talking to the human-like cyborgs using B12 as a proxy, and helping them out. How exactly B12 is able to convert cyborg speak to meows is beyond my guess, but this is also a game where a cat can be intelligent enough to carry keys to someone, and yet still be a jerk and scratch up the side of a couch. Most of the cyborgs are just there to give a bit of meaning and atmosphere to the game, but some of them actually have a plight that needs to be solved. Many of these quests are optional, resulting in rewards that basically just end up being trophy fodder, but a few characters need your help so that they can help you get to the outside, which is ultimately where Pebbles wants to be. A few characters also want to get there, for their own reasons, which is typically why they want to assist you. A lot of times, only by helping these characters out will new areas of the world open up. The game is primarily linear, but when you are in the slums area, which is revisited a few times, you do get to roam around, and it's here where a lot of your time is going to be spent, especially if you are aiming for those side quests. There's a vendor that requests specific items to trade for what he has, since these cyborgs apparently don't use traditional money. There's a bard that is looking for sheets of music so that he can play a tune on his makeshift guitar, which I should note is badass considering it's made partially from a gas can. There's other stuff as well, but I'll leave that up to you to explore, considering that's really where the fun of the game lies: exploring the world as a cat. In fact, none of the puzzles that you come across will really tax your brain too much. Many of them are simple fetch quests, where you look for an item, B12 picks it up, again, sometimes I wonder how, depending on the size of the item, and then you give the item to a character or place it somewhere. And if you get stuck, B12 is perfectly fine with helping you out with hints. So yeah, this might be an adventure game, but none of the puzzles are anywhere close to being as obtuse as old school 90s Sierra point-and-click games. Thank God for that. Let's talk about the cat's physics and movements. I gotta say, they are for the most part spot on. Pebbles can leap up high and drop down from substantial ledges, although she can't jump wherever you want. Instead, the game will show a small X cursor where you can leap, so every jump is, for lack of better terms, hard-coded into the game. This actually doesn't hurt the game too much, as it makes platforming nearly impossible to mess up. But I do use nearly impossible for a reason. There were a few times where leaping to the desired platforms didn't work because of camera placement. The game almost never has an issue where this would cause a game over, but it is something that you'll need to occasionally be on the lookout for. So what else can Pebbles do? Well, occasionally you'll get a triangle to pop up. These are areas where you can interact with the environment. Maybe she'll want to scratch the hell out of a surface. Maybe she'll knock over paint cans. Maybe you'll smack a TV remote to change the channel. Hell, there's even a bunch of areas where she'll curl up and fall asleep, and there's even an achievement where you let her sleep for an hour. That's an hour of real time where you essentially just have to let the cat be a cat. It's actually kind of funny. There's a lot of other small mannerisms that you'll find, like being able to walk across a counter and knock mugs off, breaking them, but I'll leave those up to you to find. Although I did laugh at this part, because after a massive fall, the cat limps for a few seconds, stops, grooms himself, and then he's fine again. Because cats. Oh, and there's a dedicated meow button. Seriously. You press circle to meow on cue. Carson was enthralled by this feature, as I was hitting circle and he stared at the TV. Again, cats. So is there any real danger to the cat in Stray? Well, yes, and that's where some of the plot comes into play. There are these little rodent-like creatures known as Zurks. You run into them fairly early on as they chase Pebbles through an alley, and usually there's not a thing you can do to stop them. If they latch onto you, you simply mash circle to fight them off, as the screen grows redder and redder. If you can't detach them fast enough, they will overwhelm the cat and kill it, which is actually kind of gruesome. Actually, both deaths I've seen in the game are actually kind of brutal, as the other main threat, these robot sensors, literally zap the life out of it. Ouch, that's not cool. It's actually kind of sick. I'm sure cat haters in the world would enjoy seeing that, but it does give you a sense of urgency not to let any harm come to your little furball. Anyway, these threats are few and far between, and in one chapter you actually get a device to fight back the Zurks. B12 gets a sort of ultraviolet light that works for a chapter before burning out, but it's still fun to watch these things swell up and burst. But most of the time, you'll simply be running and evading them. The game itself starts off lighthearted, but about halfway to 2/3 in, it actually gets downright creepy. I don't want to spoil too much here, but look at this. Would you expect this to be in a game where you play as a cat leaping from ledge to ledge? Organic growth and massive red eyes? There's not a ton of explanation about it either, which is kind of weird, but you do get small, vague hints to what was going on. The story overall is good and easy to follow, and although it can get downright depressing at times, you'll still find a lot of heartwarming moments, usually due to the random interactions with the cat. There were many times where I just said, "Aww," such as when the cat randomly jumps up on a cyborg and falls asleep on its chest. It wasn't even expecting it, and is visibly startled when it happens. To help flesh out the plot, you can find memories for B12 that allow him to narrate the things that he can remember in his past. 5 of these memories are automatic at specific points of the game, but the others must be found, and could be considered the optional collectible of the game. The majority of these you'll find as you are running around, but some do require a bit of extra exploration. A neat little extra is that in your inventory bubble, the game highlights which memories can be found in the chapter that you are currently in, so that is a nice feature. So yes, the game is crazy fun to play, but it's not perfect. There were some performance issues here and there that were kind of noticeable. A few frame rate stutters, especially in the late game, were found. There was also this NPC that apparently was only half built. And worst of all, in those rare times that you do die, it takes about 30 seconds for the game to reload. In most games nowadays, loading is nearly instantaneous after the initial stage load, but here it seems to take forever. This is odd because transitioning between areas doesn't bring up another loading screen, so I'm confused on why this is. Bad optimization or something, I don't know. I've also had a crash near the endgame, but fortunately I had planned on taking a break at that point anyway, and it was right after a checkpoint. And this is just a minor nitpick, but why can't we have customized our cat? That would have been such a cool feature to have. I get it, I can't have it all, but it would have been cool to have Stray allow the player to project their own feline into the game. Finally, the game is fairly short. It took me just a bit over 5 hours to complete, and that's with me getting lost in the slums for about half an hour. Yes, I missed a few side quests, which I'll be doing again in the future for the trophies, but I'd say 5 hours might be a normal runtime. There's even an achievement for finishing the game in 2 hours, which tells you right there that it's not terribly long. Adding that a guide I've seen for that 2-hour trophy mentions that you can easily finish it in an hour and a half, and you're probably not going to be spending a full week playing Stray. But that's not a bad thing. Stray is a fantastic adventure game, which is all it sets out to do. It doesn't overstay its welcome, it makes the cat truly feel realistic, well, other than the odd B12 translation bits, and the mechanics of the game itself are just solid. Sure, there's some hiccups here and there, but they're all minor and shouldn't deter you from playing Stray. Also, as a final note, I noticed that this game could be in the same universe as Remember Me. Does anybody remember that game? Especially late game areas where small sentinel robots are patrolling the area scanning for miscreants, and the whole falling apart cyberpunk city atmosphere. Anyone else besides me see this connection? Anyway, Stray is a worthwhile game to check out, whether you are a fan of cats or not. I hope more is done in this universe. Maybe next time allow us to be a dog or something. But yeah, Stray is definitely worth your time. Final score? 6 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.